She was just another maintenance worker in the rifle bay, invisible to the elite soldiers around her. Maria Santos had been cleaning weapons for 3 years at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, her weathered hands methodically disassembling, cleaning, and reassembling firearms with the kind of efficiency that comes from repetition. The SEALs barely acknowledged her presence. She was part of the background, like the fluorescent lights overhead or the smell of gun oil that permeated everything. At 34, Maria moved through the armory with quiet precision, her graying hair pulled back in a practical bun, her uniform marking her as civilian support staff. She'd grown accustomed to being overlooked by the special operations warriors who treated the rifle bay as their domain. They would drop off their weapons after training exercises, exchange brief nods of acknowledgement, and move on to their next mission briefing or physical training session. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Maria arrived at 0500 hours before most of the base had stirred to life, and began her routine inspection of the weapons that had been turned in from the previous day's training. The rifle bay hummed with the familiar sounds of her work, the soft click of components being separated, the gentle scraping of cleaning rods, and the satisfying snap of parts sliding back into place. She was midway through cleaning a customized 416 Hong Kong dollars when Petty Officer First Class Jake Morrison entered the armory. Morrison was a legend among the SEALs, 12 years of service, 3 combat deployments, and a reputation for being able to put rounds on target in conditions that would challenge most marksmen. His presence commanded immediate respect from both junior enlisted personnel and seasoned veterans alike. "Morning, Maria," Morrison said, his voice carrying the easy confidence of someone accustomed to operating in high-stress environments. "How's that 416 looking?" "Good condition, Petty Officer," Maria replied without looking up from her work. "Barrels clean, action smooth. Whoever used this yesterday took good care of it." Morrison watched her work for a moment, noting the practiced efficiency with which she handled the weapon. There was something about her movements that caught his attention, a familiarity with the firearm that went beyond basic maintenance procedures. Her grip was confident, her manipulation of the controls precise, and her inspection thorough in a way that suggested deeper knowledge than her job description required. "You know weapons pretty well," Morrison observed, leaning against the workbench. "How long have you been doing this?" 3 years here," Maria answered, still focused on her cleaning. "But I've been around firearms most of my life." There was something in her tone that made Morrison pause. It wasn't the casual familiarity of someone who had grown up hunting or target shooting with family. There was an underlying precision, a technical understanding that spoke to formal training and serious experience. "Military background?" he asked, though her personnel file listed her as civilian support staff. Maria hesitated for a moment, her hands stilling on the weapon. "Something like that," she said quietly. Before Morrison could pursue the conversation further, the armory door burst open and Sergeant Mike Chin rushed in, his face flushed with exertion and urgency. "Morrison, we've got a problem," Chin announced breathlessly. "Command just called an emergency training scenario. Active shooter situation on base, and they want Team 7 to respond immediately. Full tactical gear, live ammunition." Morrison straightened, his casual demeanor instantly shifting to combat readiness. "What's the scenario?" "Simulated terrorist infiltration of the admin building. Multiple hostiles, unknown number of civilians trapped inside. They want us suited up and moving in 10 minutes. As Morrison began gathering his gear, a complication became apparent. The 416 Hong Kong dollars he typically used for close-quarters combat scenarios was still partially disassembled on Maria's workbench. In the urgency of the moment, there wasn't time for a complete reassembly and function check. "Damn," Morrison muttered, looking at his weapon. "I need that rifle operational in 5 minutes and there's no way I can." "I can have it ready in 3, Maria said quietly, her hands already moving with sudden urgency. Morrison paused, studying her face. There was something different in her expression now, a focused intensity that hadn't been there moments before. "You sure about that?" Instead of answering, Maria's hands began moving with startling speed and precision. She assembled the upper and lower receivers with movements so fluid they seemed choreographed, her fingers finding each component without hesitation. The bolt carrier group slid into place with a satisfying click, the charging handle seated perfectly, and the safety selector moved through its positions with mechanical precision. Within 2 minutes she had the weapon fully assembled. But then she did something that made Morrison's eyes widen. Without being asked, Maria conducted a complete function check, testing the trigger mechanism, verifying the safety systems, and examining the barrel for any obstructions, with the kind of systematic thoroughness that spoke to advanced training. Function check complete, she announced, offering the weapon back to Morrison. Ready for immediate deployment. Morrison accepted the rifle, but instead of rushing off to join his team, he stood perfectly still, studying Maria with new understanding. Something about her weapon handling, her terminology, and her obvious competence triggered a recognition that made him reconsider everything he thought he knew about the civilian maintenance worker. "Maria," he said slowly, "where exactly did you serve?" For a moment, Maria's carefully maintained civilian facade flickered. Her posture straightened almost imperceptibly, and her eyes took on a sharpness that hadn't been there before. "I didn't serve anywhere officially," she replied, but there was weight in her words that suggested a much more complex story. Morrison made a decision that would change both their lives. Instead of rushing to join his team for the training exercise, he did something unprecedented. He placed his fully loaded 416 Hong Kong dollars back in Maria's hands and stepped back, his expression serious and expectant. "Show me," he said simply. Maria looked down at the weapon in her hands, and something fundamental shifted in her demeanor. The unassuming maintenance worker disappeared, replaced by someone who clearly understood the lethal potential of what she was holding. Her grip adjusted automatically to proper firing position, her stance shifted to a combat-ready posture, and her eyes scanned the room with the kind of tactical awareness that comes only from extensive training. "I can't," she whispered, but her body language contradicted her words. Every aspect of her positioning demonstrated professional competence with the weapon. "You can," Morrison insisted. "And you need to. Because in about 30 seconds, I'm supposed to be across the base dealing with a scenario that requires precision shooting, and something tells me you're exactly the kind of backup I didn't know I needed." The urgency of the moment, combined with Morrison's obvious confidence in her abilities, seemed to break through whatever psychological barriers Maria had constructed around her past. She looked up at him, and for the first time he saw the real person behind the civilian disguise. "Gunnery Sergeant Maria Santos," she said quietly. "Marine Corps Scout Sniper, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. 3 combat deployments, Afghanistan and Iraq. Honorably discharged 4 years ago." Morrison's expression shifted from curiosity to respect to something approaching awe. Marine Scout snipers represented some of the most elite marksmen in the military, trained to operate independently in hostile environments and capable of making shots that most soldiers couldn't even attempt. "Why are you cleaning weapons instead of carrying them?" he asked. Maria's face clouded with old pain. "PTSD. Civilian transition issues. Lost my confidence after a mission went bad. Figured I'd be safer around weapons if I wasn't the one firing them." The armory door opened again, and Sergeant Chen appeared with increasing urgency. "Morrison, we need to move now. Command is asking where Team 7 is." Morrison looked at Maria, then at Chen, then made a decision that violated approximately 12 regulations and ignored every protocol he'd been taught about civilian involvement in military operations. "Chen, I need you to tell Command that Team 7 is deploying with enhanced sniper support. We've got a Marine Scout sniper who's going to provide overwatch during the exercise." Chen's eyes widened as he took in Maria's transformed posture and the way she held the rifle. Is she qualified?" "More qualified than anyone else on this base," Morrison replied with absolute certainty. Over the next hour, what was supposed to be a routine training exercise became a demonstration of exceptional marksmanship and tactical coordination. Maria, positioned in an overwatch role with Morrison's 416 Hong Kong dollars, provided precision fire support that allowed the SEAL team to complete their mission with unprecedented efficiency. From her elevated position overlooking the simulated battlefield, she delivered accurate suppressive fire that pinned down opposing forces, created tactical opportunities for the assault team, and demonstrated the kind of battlefield awareness that comes only from extensive combat experience. The exercise controllers, initially confused by reports of unauthorized sniper support, quickly realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Maria's performance was flawless. Every shot placed exactly where needed, every tactical decision perfectly timed to support the team's objectives. When the exercise concluded, the after-action review became less about the SEAL team's performance and more about understanding how a civilian maintenance worker had demonstrated elite-level combat skills. The base commander, initially prepared to deliver reprimands for protocol violations, found himself instead conducting an impromptu interview with a Marine veteran whose service record demanded respect. "Gunnery Sergeant Santos," the commander said, reviewing the hastily retrieved personnel files that revealed her true background, "your military record is exemplary. Why aren't you serving in an active capacity?" Maria, still holding Morrison's rifle with obvious comfort, explained her journey from combat veteran to civilian support staff. The psychological challenges that had driven her from active duty, the struggle to find purpose in civilian life, and her belief that she was no longer capable of the precision and confidence that had once defined her military service. Today suggests otherwise, the commander observed. Your performance during this exercise was exceptional by any standard. Morrison stepped forward, his respect for Maria now obvious to everyone in the room. Sir, with your permission, I'd like to recommend Gunnery Sergeant Santos for immediate consideration for a training instructor position. Our sniper school could use someone with her experience and capabilities. The transformation in Maria was remarkable. The confidence that had emerged during the exercise remained, replacing the self-doubt that had characterized her civilian role. She stood straighter, spoke with authority, and handled weapons with the kind of natural competence that couldn't be faked or forgotten. Ma'am, Morrison said, addressing her directly, what do you think? Ready to stop cleaning other people's weapons and start teaching them how to use them properly? Maria looked around the room at the faces of military personnel who now saw her not as a maintenance worker, but as a fellow warrior who had temporarily lost her way. The weight of the rifle in her hands felt familiar and comforting rather than threatening. Gunnery Sergeant Santos reporting for duty, she said, her voice carrying the confidence that had been missing for 4 years. 6 months later, Maria Santos had become one of the most respected instructors at the Naval Special Warfare Sniper School. Her students, both SEALs and Marines, learned not just marksmanship, but the kind of tactical thinking and psychological resilience that she had rediscovered in that rifle bay. Morrison, now serving as her liaison with SEAL training programs, often reflected on the moment when he had placed his weapon in her hands and stepped back. Sometimes he realized, the most important decision a warrior can make is recognizing the warrior in someone else. The rifle bay where Maria had spent 3 years in invisible service became a symbol of her transformation. The woman who had once hidden her capabilities behind civilian duties now stood before classes of elite operators, sharing the knowledge and experience that had never truly left her. And every morning, when she picked up her rifle to begin another day of training the next generation of warriors, Maria remembered the SEAL who had seen past her disguise and given her back her confidence. Sometimes the greatest battles are fought not against external enemies, but against the fears that keep us from being who we truly are. The maintenance worker was gone. The Marine had returned. And in the rifle bay where her journey had restarted, new warriors learned from someone who had found her way back from the shadows to the light.